Merci. Je voulais juste partager l'expérience du Cambodge parce qu'on a deux ministères, culture et tourisme. Donc pour nous, on ne dit pas le mariage entre la culture et le tourisme. On considère que la culture et le tourisme, c'est comme des frères et des sœurs. Donc on est dans la même famille et chacun de notre enfant a le droit à la même attention de notre parent, c'est-à-dire notre gouvernement, au ministère des Finances. Donc, comment associer ça selon ma propre expérience? C'est-à-dire entre le ministère de Culture et Tourisme devrait tout passer par le dialogue. Par le dialogue, pourquoi? Parce que chacun a fait sa propre culture. Par exemple, la politique de la culture et la politique du tourisme. Mais avant de mettre en œuvre cette culture, cette politique, on a des discussions fortement interministérielles, c'est-à-dire tous les partis concernés, ils se voient, se discutent, et remontent à plusieurs reprises, plusieurs étapes, jusqu'on a déterminé une culture de tourisme et politique de tourisme et politique culturelle ensemble. Donc c'est pour ça, à travers cette question-là, je crois que la culture, la discussion est très importante au sein de notre gouvernement, au sein des responsables et autorités concernées. Parce qu'au Cambodge, nous, on a encore des autorités Apsara qui aussi participaient activement avec la préservation de notre patrimoine aussi. Donc, comment je fais travailler avec le ministère du Tourisme en tant que la culture? Vous savez que le Cambodge, on est très fort riche en culture, patrimoine tangible et intangible. Et je crois que c'est le vecteur. On a diffusé l'image du Cambodge, de culture à travers le tourisme et le tourisme à travers la culture. Donc, je voulais dire que d'abord, quand on a sorti de la guerre, tout de suite, quand on a parlé de Cambodge, tout le monde parlait de Khmer Rouge tout de suite. Mais sachant que maintenant, l'image change. L'image change parce que depuis le Cambodge à mettre son accent de plus en plus dans le marché international, dans la communauté européenne, dans la communauté internationale. Donc maintenant, on a ici la présente exemple de conférence, c'est un exemple de l'image du Cambodge et que vous avez l'occasion de visiter notre patrimoine de temples différents au Cambodge. Et aussi, vous pouvez faire la connaissance avec le patrimoine immatériel aussi, avec la danse, avec la musique, avec la traditionnelle khmer. Donc, on a fait beaucoup d'activités, par exemple, en envoyant notre groupe artistique dans différents pays. C'est-à-dire, on a promouvoir, ce n'est pas seulement la culture khmer, mais aussi attirer le tourisme. Envoyer aussi les sculptures khmer dans les différents grands musées dans le monde entier, c'est une chose de vecteur que la culture aide le tourisme à développer au Cambodge. Et j'ajoute encore, ce n'est pas seulement la relation entre la culture et le tourisme, les deux unités ou bien autorités. Ici, pour nous, l'expérience importante pour nous, c'est la communauté. C'est l'engagement de la communauté qui devrait prendre en considération avec les NGO, avec la communauté locale. Oui, parce qu'au Cambodge, le tourisme local se présente une fois dominant aussi dans notre société. Donc, c'est l'expérience que je voulais partager avec vous tous.
Well, I'm from Bangladesh, and we have our cultural minister here. I don't think that there is contradiction between the Ministry of Culture and Ministry of Tourism. The both can go together if there is a policy linkage between that. Our government has made a national policy in 2006 where it has been clearly stated that there should be policy linkage between the Tourism Ministry and the Cultural Ministry. And also now we have, as we have, you know that he has also already mentioned that we have got 3 UN heritage, that is Paharpur, then Sundarban, and Shad Gambuz Mosque. So these are being taken care of by the Ministry of Culture, but for the Tourist Ministry, we always encourage this as a tourist sport. And we think that there should be, what we need is that we have to remove the difficulties in accessibility to those places, and also should create awareness among the people that is most important. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to ask a specific question of the Secretary of Social Affairs and Culture of Macau. Macau, as we know, is a very interesting special economic zone, a special administrative region, I should say. And it has been spectacularly successful in the gaming industry. It has blossomed there, but it is also a rich cultural heritage.
Yeah.
So my question to you is how are you managing to bring out the cultural side of this when at the moment it's such a dominant force in the leisure, in the gaming industry?
Thank you very much for your question. Actually, I'd like to refer to what Dr. Rifai said. I totally agree with him. To give you my friends an example, I'm Secretary for Social Affairs and Culture in Macau. And my portfolio includes tourism, culture, sport, education, social welfare, and health. It's quite right. Well, it depends on what government wants to do. For me, it's quite important. For example, in my portfolio, whenever I need to call a point, the Bureau of Tourism and the Bureau of Culture and the Bureau of Sport, I mean, they have to think together. They have to coordinate what they want to promote the industry tourism in Macau. So it's very important, and I think it's quite good. You'll be under one secretary and not separate secretaries. That's what I said. Regarding to what you said, and I would like to give a little bit time to explain the Macau. As you know, Macau is quite well known for its East meets West characteristics due to the presence of Portuguese in our territory for the past 4 centuries, and its immense cultural footprint in our city. That's why in Macau we have a lot of Portuguese monument icons, architects, and even the Catholic religions, etc. In 2005, due to our special and unique cultural legacy, Macau was recognized with the inclusion of UNESCO World Heritage List of Macau Historic Center. Well, just 10 years ago. 10 years ago. And we found that, of course, thanks to UNESCO, we found that a lot of tourists coming to Macau, not only for casinos, as you mentioned, but also they want to see the culture, the Portuguese culture. Because 400 years ago, Portuguese arrived in Macau and they started to build many churches, monuments, and museums, etc. And we found that we have to combine the Portuguese heritage and the Chinese heritage together. It's quite successful. Perhaps many people, friends, have been to Macau. In Macau, we have one monument called Ruins St. Paul. Just next to this ruin, there was one Chinese old temple that was built perhaps 300 years ago. What I want to say is, you know, in this tiny territory with just 32 square kilometers, we received last year more than 31.5 million tourists. Of course, They came to Macau not, I emphasize, not just for game industry or casinos. They came to Macau to see this kind of monument, the harmony of the cultures.
So you're
mixed
actually
together.
developing that side of Macau much, well, you're marketing it that much more now. The monuments, the heritage.
Yeah, right. In order to preserve this kind of heritage, a few years ago, Macau government has published a very important World Heritage Protection Law. This law is very important for all the Macau because, of course, the economy of Macau has been booming, and many constructors want to destroy the old building to build a new building. Of course, according to this law, they are not allowed to build because all the old buildings are protected by Macau government, and all of Macau citizens have to follow this law. That's why I would like to share with all of my friends. It's very important. We have to obey the law in order to protect our world heritage, because for us it's quite important. Without our world heritage, I'm sure the tourists will not come to Macau.
All right, so I'm
right.
afraid we are running out of time, so I'm going to have to keep moving. But I do appreciate the efforts being taken by Macau to develop that side. I would like to move on. I would like to speak to the Chinese National Tourist Association, sir. And I would like to ask you this question about tourism and culture and how they are working together. What sort of government policies do you have in place to ensure that closer collaboration between culture and tourism? Okay, I think that's working now.
谢谢主持人。各国的发展的经验，让我们很有收获，也很有借鉴。那么我在这里呢，也愿意呢把中国的一些做法和体会和各位进行分享。那么中国国家主席习近平先生去年在教科文组织大会上曾经这样讲。他说呢，这个文明的继承和发展，文化的弘扬和繁荣，与国家的富强紧密相关。中国国家旅游局呢，一直积极投入和致力于呢文化和旅游的融合。去年呢，首先我们颁布了《中华人民共和国的旅游法》。把文化的资源、旅游的资源，用法律的方式，把它进行了固化和保护。其二呢，我们在发展旅游的过程当中，一直强调开发服从保护，发展服从保护。那么在景区建设、旅游资源利用和开发的时候，把保护摆在了第一位。其三呢，我们愿意用呢保护的方式，用发展的方式为保护呢获取发展的成本和保护的成本。第四呢，我们教育国民能够爱护和尊重各国的文化和各国的风俗。大家知道，近几年来，中国每年有超过1个亿的人到全球 110个旅游目的地进行观光和旅游。我们教育我们的国民呢，要尊重、服从、爱护各国的文化和旅游资源。在这样一个过程当中呢，使我们的资源得以利用。此外呢，在中国呢，经常说上这样几句话。我们说呢，文化是旅游的灵魂，旅游呢是文化的载体。没有文化的旅游呢是没有生命的，那么没有旅游的文化呢也是没有活力的。同样呢，文化需要通过旅游才能把影响力转化为生产力。旅游呢还是文化的重要渠道，文化的传承的重要的依托，文化创新的重要的动力。通过旅游呢，可以传播一个国家的民族和优良传统和文化的魅力，促进不同文化背景的人来呢增进了解，加强互信，密切情感，展示呢一个国家和民族的整体形象、文化素质、价值追求，促进呢人与自然的和谐。中国国家旅游局呢，愿意和全球的各级旅游部门，在世界旅游组织、教科文组织的指导下，共同的追逐中国旅游业的可持续的发展和全球旅游业的健康的发展。谢谢。
Thank you very much. Working all together, a global approach. I'd like to call on the Minister for the Economy for Lithuania. We spoke a little bit about this a little earlier, about tourism culture, where projects come together as one. And you were talking about the Amber Route, and I was wondering whether you could elaborate on that and also just talk about how you are merging and producing results.
Dear Secretary General, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Dear Secretary General, dear Ministers. First of all, I would like shortly to thank, on behalf of the delegation of the Republic of Lithuania to UNWTO, UNESCO and Cambodia for the warm welcome and excellent organization of the event. I would like to stress that the development of cultural tourism in Lithuania is a strategic priority, along with business, green and health tourism. To explore other countries' experience and to tell about our achievements, that's why we are here. This is our purpose of our visit. I would like to say that we have quite good partnership between cultural and tourism stakeholders. And we do achieve this using various tools, such as creation of the institutional framework, legal basis, of course, of financial tools, and one other traditional manners. But today, I want to say about to share an example about a new initiative. And this initiative is a cultural route for tourism. Of course, I am not going now to tell everybody about how important are cultural routes. Tomorrow we will have a special session on this, but just I will say that this new initiative, the World Amber Route, is quite a new thing. It is new and very fruitful result of the cooperation of WTO, Lithuania, and more than 10 countries at the moment. The project unites all countries which are having interest in amber. The Amber Road was an ancient trade route for the transfer of amber from coastal areas to the North Sea and the Baltic Sea to the Mediterranean Sea. Prehistoric trade routes between Northern and Southern Europe were defined by the amber trade. As an important raw material, sometimes called the gold of the North, amber was transported from the North Sea and Baltic Sea coasts to Italy, Greece, and Black Sea, Syria, and Egypt thousands of years ago and long after. Nowadays, when tourists seek for new experiences and adventures off the beaten path and rather choose legends, amber is a perfect transnational theme which begins in Europe and connects continents. The Amber Road is not a physical road that leads from point A to B, but rather a present-day virtual experience. The Amber Road Development Initiative aims to involve a wide target audience by implementing a variety of marketing activities. These activities will result in increasing tourist flows to amber destinations, enhanced awareness and appreciation, preservation and responsible use of amber as a unique natural, historical and cultural heritage, facilitating public-private partnerships and the integration of tourism-related enterprises along the thematic Amber Road. Also, increased employment in the sector, development of clear and practical information on amber for potential tourists, development of sustainable tourism in Europe, and etc. You can explore the virtual Amber Road on the website www.worldamberroad.travel. And I cordially invite everybody who are interested tomorrow to attend the session on cultural routes and receive more information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Amber Route. Okay, remember that email address. I'd like to move on to talk about policy, about where to next. What do we do next? How can we take this whole process forward? What are the policies, the partnerships, the private-public partnerships, the so-called PPP partnerships, and also how do we measure them? If I could call on the Tourism Minister of Malaysia to just address this issue about what sort of policies Malaysia is involved with in the private sector and the public sector and how they're being measured. So the Malaysian Minister, sir.
Hello, yeah, can you hear me?
Very good.
Okay, in Malaysia, we have already married off tourism and culture as one ministry since 1978. So I'm also now Minister of Tourism and Culture. And of course, immediately what comes to mind that the advantages that we have having one ministry is that I don't need to explain to the audience that both the tourism industry have to work together because I'm just one. So I have to work with myself. And also coming here, our cost is not that much because I see certain countries sending 2 ministers, whereas I just come alone and represent both tourism and culture. Now, you're talking about what we have done for the participation of the private and the private sector and the government. In Malaysia, we have no problem at all about getting the private sector to work with the government. In fact, it is their CSR, the corporate social responsibility of many big conglomerates in Malaysia, for them to sponsor events for Ministry of Tourism and Culture. We provide exemption in taxes where they give money to us, then it can be accounted for when it comes to collecting taxes from them. So there is some tax exemption for whatever contribution they make to culture and tourism. And of course, it has helped tourism in Malaysia. As I've said, we have got no problems getting the private sector to work with the government because everybody is involved in protection and preservation of culture in our country.
Just a quick question there. Is there any area that you would not want to see private enterprise involved with in conjunction with the government?
Yes, of course, when it comes to privatization of a heritage area, that is certainly a no-no. I mean, there is a temptation that we get some private companies to be wholly responsible for certain monument or historical sites. That is something which we don't allow, because we have the Antiquities Act, we have the Heritage Act, which disallow any private sector to come and get involved in, being fully responsible for any site. That responsibility is ours. The private sector is just to help us out.
Okay. I want to ask from Bahrain about policies and about effectiveness.
Thank you very much for giving me the chance to really talk about a very important topic, which is the public-private partnership initiatives taking place in the Kingdom of Bahrain. In Bahrain, we've launched a very ambitious project called Invest in Culture. It was a project that was directed by my minister, Sheikh Hamaya Al Khalifa, and actually tomorrow she will be talking excessively about how this project has started. It has started out by a collaboration with actually an NGO, a non-governmental organization, and the collaboration with the private sector and the NGO that was a culture-oriented NGO has resulted in developing a complete area in the city of Muharraq. Later on, the project has moved into the government. It was adopted by the Minister of Culture, and now the collaboration between the large corporation and the Ministry of Culture has led to the development of a museum in a World Heritage Site, which is Qalat al-Bahrain site, and also a number of projects on the Pearling Route, which has been recently listed as a World Heritage Site, which is a route commemorating the heritage of pearling in the island of Bahrain. And the private sector has really contributed a lot towards the development of this route and towards the development of certain museums and other supporting infrastructure.
I'm just curious, what has been the issues, the problems, the challenges the government has faced in working this particular strategy? Is there any problems that have stood out your partnership with the private sector?
Actually, on the contrary, and this is why I would like to use my position here today to really call for more involvement of large corporations to attend such big conferences, because they are willing to take part. But we, I think, as the governments and also as international organizations, seem to not be outreaching to such corporation. We maybe always criticize that they are eroding the culture or not contributing to the support. But once they are approached with the right package, with the right communication strategy, what is in it for them as well, they are very willing. We have amazing examples. Whole museum has been developed purely by the contribution of the private sector. When we approach them, they are willing. And I would like to talk maybe something about, out of the context of Bahrain, to say that the involvement of large corporations is crucial in such meetings. It's not only the government and the international organization. The funding is a big problem for everybody. And I think now there is a lot of money in the international corporations, and they should put this money in the right place. And we have a great example in Bahrain.
And do they do it purely on profit-driven motives, or is there also a community, a CSR part of this?
It is really a CSR. They are, the more exposure you give to the organization, the more willing they are to offer. So in that way, there is a bit of an indirect profit connection because they are exposed. But large corporations now have large funds for the CSR department. They are obliged to have a CSR policy, and many of them, because they operate from the business mind, they don't really know where to spend this money. So I think there is a great chance for many countries to approach them. And especially banks. I mean, even organizations that has nothing to do with tourism or culture or hospitality. We have development banks, motor industries, different corporations.
Thank you very much for that. I'd like to bring in the Republic of Korea now, the Minister of Culture, Sport and Tourism, because Korea, obviously, some very enormously successful companies, enormously international companies now, who have been instrumental in building the economy of Korea over the decades. Are they now becoming involved in cultural developments, in tourism developments, in partnership with the government?
우선 한국의 경험을 공유하게 돼서 굉장히 반갑습니다. 한국 정부는 창조경제 실현을 위해서 그동안에 많은 노력을 해왔습니다. 창조경제라는 건 창의성을 경제의 핵심 가치로 두고 과학기술과 ICT 융합을 통해서 산업과 문화가 융합해서 새로운 가치를 창출하고 또 새로운 일자리를 만들어내는 것입니다. 한국의 문화체육관광부는 문화 콘텐츠 산업을 한국형 창조 산업으로다가 육성해왔고 또 이런 노력이 결실을 맺어서 한국의 영화, 드라마, 대중음악 같은 거는 아시아뿐만 아니라 전 세계에서 인기를 얻고 있습니다. 2000년대 초반부터 중반까지 한국의 굉장히 많은 드라마들이 전 세계적으로 인기를 끌었고 또 그러다면서 이제 소위 한류 붐을 일으키는데 기여했습니다. 또한 2000년대 후반부터 현재까지는 K-팝을 중심으로 한류가 전 세계로 확장되는 현상을 보게 됐습니다. 한국 콘텐츠 인기에 따라서 관광 목적지로서 한국에 대한 인지도라든지 또 국가의 이미지도 상당히 높아졌습니다. 구체적으로 보면은 영화나 드라마 촬영지를 방문한다든지 또 K-팝 스타하고 팬 미팅을 한다든지 공연 관람 또 인기 연예인을 담기 위해서 미용 서비스 구매 등을 주목적으로 하는 관광객들의 증대가 확실하게 많이 나타났습니다. 이에 힘입어서 한국을 찾는 외래 관광객 숫자가 작년에 1,420만 명을 기록하는 등 최근에 굉장히 급속한 성장세를 이어가고 있습니다. 그리고 한국 문화 콘텐츠 역량으로 한국을 방문한 외래 관광객들은 화장품, 패션 의류, 더 나아가서 가전제품에 대한 쇼핑을 즐기고 있고 이에 따라서 관련 제품을 생산하는 제조업하고 면세점, 백화점 같은 유통산업까지 호황을 누리고 있습니다. 한편에서는 외래 관광객의 미용 서비스에 대한 수요 증가로 관련 의료기관까지 수혜를 받고 있습니다. 문화 콘텐츠 산업의 성장이 외래 관광객 증가를 견인하고 외래 관광객의 소비 지출이 내수 산업의 새로운 활력을 불어넣는 창조경제의 선순환 구조가 형성되고 있다고 할 수 있겠습니다. 한국 정부는 이러한 산업 간 긍정적인 파급 효과가 더욱 확대될 수 있도록 정책적인 지원을 강화할 예정입니다. 문화 콘텐츠 산업, 또 관광 산업, ICT 산업, 기타 유관 산업 간의 창의적 협업을 활성화할 것인데 특히 다양한 분야의 젊은 인재들이 새로운 아이디어를 바탕으로 융합적 비즈니스 모델을 마음껏 시도해 볼 수 있도록 창업 지원을 확대하고 있습니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you very much. Cultural developments and obviously very successful cultural developments in Korea. I'm afraid we have about 5 more minutes left. I would like to, before we wrap up, to get our closing comments from Mr. Perez and also Dr. Rifai. But a comment from India first of all.
Thank you very much for giving this chance, Mr. Moderator. I wanted to share with this August gathering the Indian experience of CSR, that is Corporate Social Responsibility. Government of India have enacted a law, 2% of their profit after tax has to be given for CSR, and culture is very much part of that spending. As a result, most of the top leading industrial houses have been coming forward for the preservation of the iconic monuments preserved by the Government of India. So this can be one of the what we call the possible sources of funding, the CSR funding for the preservation of iconic monuments that we have started in India. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a very interesting point actually, 2% of post-tax profits going to CSR with an emphasis on culture. There are 3 speakers here who I didn't get to. I'd like to get to before we go. I'd like to start with Paraguay, if I could. If you are still here, you've been patient enough to stay with us. Madam, if you could just sort of sum up where Paraguay is now and what your challenges are.
¿Se escucha? Muy buenas tardes. Sí, Paraguay es un país de poco más de 400.000 kilómetros cuadrados, pero con un gran potencial turístico se puede decir que Paraguay es un país joven por varios motivos. Primero, que estamos en esa época de crecimiento importante, pero por otro lado, por el componente joven. Tenemos la población más joven de Latinoamérica, 75% de la población está comprendida entre 20 y 29 años. Y eso porque para nosotros es un pilar importante trabajar el turismo interno con relación al turismo joven. ¿Por qué? Porque no solamente es el gran consumidor, sino que la juventud es la punta de lanza para llevar la cultura a otras generaciones. Y me refiero a la cultura no solamente a lo intangible, sino también a lo tangible. Para mí la clave, aparte de lo que ya dijeron todos los países, muy importante, muy enriquecedora la tarde, mencionar de que para nuestro país es clave el trabajo con las comunidades. La frase clave que enmarca la actividad turística en este momento es el empoderamiento de las comunidades. Sin el empoderamiento de las comunidades, sin el reconocimiento de las comunidades locales, de ese patrimonio, sea tangible o intangible, no podremos llamar a este desarrollo sostenible. Es cierto que existen las políticas públicas y mi país se reconoce a nivel internacional en materia de turismo por la continuidad de las políticas públicas, pero las autoridades estamos de paso y quienes quedan con el beneficio y el reconocimiento de que el turismo es esa gran industria que dinamiza no solamente con cultura, sino con el medio ambiente, con la naturaleza, etcétera, es la comunidad. Cuando trabajamos el turismo interno, lo que hacemos es, aparte de dinamizar esa moneda, que para nosotros se llama el guaraní y que se traduce también en un idioma y que a propósito es una gran cultura. La cultura guaraní es la cultura más arraigada en Sudamérica. En Latinoamérica ustedes saben que hay muchos elementos comunes. Estamos hablando del idioma, de la alimentación, de algunos ingredientes, de la música, de la cultura, del arte. Pero hay algo que nos identifica como pueblo y es la cultura guaraní. Entonces, necesitamos que esas comunidades entiendan que el elemento cultural que le identifica a cada región es sin duda alguna lo que pondrá a nuestro país en la vitrina internacional. Trabajar en el turismo interno por la dinamización de la economía. Contamos con una ruta potencialmente turística a nivel internacional, con más de 8 pueblos, que es la ruta jesuítica, Patrimonio UNESCO de la Humanidad, y que compartimos esta similitud con otros países de Latinoamérica, Bolivia, Argentina, Brasil, Uruguay y por supuesto Paraguay. Cada país muestra algo distinto de lo que fue este legado cultural por sobre todas las cosas. Eso va a ser fruto de una exposición mañana que yo estaré diciendo, la ruta jesuítica guaraní. Pero muy importante lo que voy a recalcar, el trabajo con las comunidades a través de un programa denominado Turismo Joven, empoderándole a los jóvenes, no solamente como grandes consumidores, sino como protagonistas de ese proceso. Muchas gracias.
Very well said, very well said. Youth, it is the future, and they are the people who will take over what we leave behind. So, again, it is up to us to make that difference. The Executive Secretary of Tourism for Paraguay, thank you very much. I'd like to call on the Deputy Minister of Tourism and Culture for Azerbaijan now to also give their comments, their thoughts about where they are proceeding with this.
Thank you very much. Speaking after all these speakers, I wish to be a postscriptum of this roundtable. I would like to thank, first of all, the UNWTO and UNESCO for the brilliant organization of this event, of this conference, and the government of Cambodia, first of all, for their efforts, both ministers, tourism and culture. We heard today a lot of ideas. Some ideas we share these ideas, some not. But the most important that the dialogue is established between two sectors, irrespective of the fact where it is, in one ministry or in different ministries. And my proposal is to continue this dialogue. I support the idea of the previous speakers to join maybe private sector to this dialogue, to hear from them their proposals about all the problems which we heard already today. And as a concrete proposal, I know that most of people sitting here, you received an invitation to our Forum of Intercultural Dialogue, which will be held in the capital city of Azerbaijan, Baku city, on 18 and 19 of May, when a special panel will be dedicated to the cultural tourism, which we know the baby of today's marriage. And so you are all invited to this forum, which is a continuation of Baku process proclaimed by the President of Azerbaijan since 2009, and which is organized under the umbrella of UNWTO, UNESCO, UN Alliance of Civilizations, Council of Europe, and the UNESCO. So I invite you all to our forum, and good luck for the future discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And finally, before we get to our closing statements from our co-sponsors of this discussion, I'd like to call on the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, the Bureau of Education and Cultural Affairs in the United States, to talk about perhaps what he's heard today and what issues you face in the US, because we've dealt a lot with emerging economies, developing economies. What are the biggest challenges a market like the US faces?
Oh, thank you very much, and I hope nobody minds if I stand. It's easier to see all the other participants. I'll be quite brief. We take a somewhat different view of this conference and what we hope to get out of it and the answer to your question. Because in the United States, as many of you, or probably all of you know, we have no Ministry of Culture. We have no Ministry of Tourism. Some of you are also Ministers of Sports and Youth. We don't have those either. So those questions, I associate myself gladly with the comments of Secretary General Rafai about it doesn't really matter how you structure yourself as long as everybody necessary cooperates. And it really is across the board, all of society that has to cooperate in these areas, and that's the approach we try and take in the United States. The second is, because we do not have such ministries, I'm from, of course, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Department of State, and our interest is not in the culture of the United States per se, or tourism to the United States. It's in working with and assisting where possible and where desirable other countries with their cultural and tourism issues. So what I'm doing here is, first of all, delighted that thanks to UNWTO, UNESCO, and the Cambodian government, we have assembled in one place some of the best minds in the world on all of these topics, and a lot of individuals with very practical experience in government and management on how you deal with these issues. And we're looking for good models, new models of how we can all cooperate with each other to get this job that we all appreciate equally, get this job done. In terms of your particular question, one area that we work a lot on is to combat looting and trafficking in cultural property. And we work through UNESCO. We also work bilaterally with other countries. Many of my colleagues here, we have bilateral agreements with them to prevent looting and pillaging of cultural objects. And as we look at developing culture and developing tourism, we also have to keep an eye on the law enforcement aspect, the issue of transnational crime and profit making through looting, because that's an equally destructive way of ruining local culture forever, and therefore losing any possible economic benefit for the country and for the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and it is a point very, very well taken. We did touch on this subject, but it is trafficking is very much a part of this discussion, and it is very, very difficult to stamp out, and I'm sure we are all very, very well aware of that. On that note, I will thank our panelists. Before we show our appreciation, I would just like to ask Assistant Director General Perez to say a few words in summing up, and also Secretary General Rafai as well. But Mr. Perez, perhaps you could just give us a few words in summary.
Thank you so much. Does it work? Yes, it works. First of all, I want to thank again the government and the people of Cambodia for this wonderful meeting. We have been very pleased to organize it with them, and as well as with our sister organization, UNWTO. I want to make some final remarks, if you allow me. First, I want to refer to what the distinguished representative of the United States have just said on recalling the words of the UNESCO Director General this morning. Travel doesn't mean illegal traffic of cultural goods. It's exactly the contrary. So we are very pleased that on the agreement made upon the restitution of cultural goods to Cambodia by some American institutions, and we think it's a major success of the 1970 Convention on Illicit Traffic. UNESCO is supporting constantly. And then I would like to give some remarks on our debate, on this afternoon debate. Three main subjects. First, the issue of conservation and development. I wish to recall, I did in the press conference, that the Prime Minister of Cambodia very rightly said in his speech that conservation is for development and development is for conservation. This is, in my view, a very short statement, but very clear one, which means a lot for us, because it comes to be the heart of the long-term perspective. The sustainability means exactly this. We have to keep what we have received from the past for the future generations, but we have to use it in such a way that we can keep it and also being a living heritage, not just a dead heritage. This belongs to the responsibility of everybody, not just states, public administrations, government, or even civil society. It belongs also to the international community, of course, through the United Nations system. UNESCO is the leading agency for culture, but for tourism it is the United Nations Tourist World Organization. We are sister organizations. We should work together as we have done up till now, and we are doing in this precise context. But I have to stress the need for a partnership between civil society and public sector, and also the private companies and the private sector, because there are two main fields for cooperation. One is the ruling of these issues. This comes to be a major public responsibility, but it's not only for the administration, the parliament, and the governments. It's also for citizens. It's also for communities. It's also for civil society. And also there is the managing issue. There are many, not only monuments, but even museums, even cultural institutions of every kind, and the creative economy too, that has to be privately managed, because according with the rules established by the public sector and the government and the parliament, they can be better managed by private management rather than public, except in the cases where public goods are involved, what the economists should know as public goods. That means things that cannot be provided without public financing. So there are shared responsibilities in managing these particular areas. I think tourism has never been a part from the culture. Since the beginning of history, economy has an enormous share on cultural creation and cultural development. But culture is not only on managing issues and money, but has to be funded properly. So the tourism, I also want to stress, is also a tool for peace, for understanding and for dialogue, and also a tool for personal fulfillment and getting a better knowledge of the world and a better vision of what we are and who the others are. So I think this perspective has to be also to be taken into account. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And I'll leave the final closing comments to the Secretary General of the UNWTO, Dr. Rafai.
Like our friends in the US, I'd rather stand up as well. It's more conducive and more interactive. I have one comment and two thanks. My comment is a story. Last year, I was in the city of Hyderabad in India. And I was put in a hotel called the Taj Hotel, one of the very nice hotels in Hyderabad. This hotel used to belong to one of the richest men in the world, the Nizam, the king of Hyderabad at the time, in the 18th and 19th century. At night, at the end of the working day, I went down to the garden and I started to walk. And one single thought came to my mind. If this building and these grounds were not transformed into a hotel, no budget in the world, let alone the budget of India or Hyderabad, could have been able to preserve it and keep it to its beauty. There is no way anybody could have kept it alive, kept the stories and the tradition, if this would have not been transformed into something that is usable, something that respects the history, and something that provides pleasure and fulfillment and entertainment to everybody. That's the thought I want to leave with you. Tourism has two natural capitals: cultural heritage and natural heritage. No intelligent person would consume their capital. We need to make the capitals grow, become better, more beautiful, richer, and bigger. And that's precisely the relationship. From all what we have heard today, it is clear that tourism, the growth of tourism on one hand, the preservation of our cultural heritage on the other hand, are not a zero-sum game at all. The growth of tourism must mean the betterment and the enhancement of our culture, and the enhancement of our culture should in turn become more revenues and better life to people. This is the principle. If we start making balances and we start making compromises, then we're not on the wrong footing. This is a win-win situation and we must live up to our challenge. We should never be afraid of growth, never be afraid of numbers, but we should be able to meet up the challenge by management, by new technologies and by innovations, not by telling people don't come. The world should enjoy the world today. This is the rule. The two thanks. One is for Andrew. We know you as a very welcomed guest in the homes and in the privacy of our own living rooms. This is the first time we see you survive over 3 hours, patiently, intelligently, and giving almost, I say almost because I don't think you missed anybody, but everybody had a chance to say something. It was a big challenge. I thank you so much. And I really value and cherish very much our partnership with CNN. You represent the best of them, and they represent the best of what we'd like them to be. Thank you so much. But my next thanks is to all of you. You sat here very, very patiently and very, very engaged. Each and every one of you could be in his hotel room relaxing, or enjoying the beauty of Angkor Wat here, or just doing nothing, sitting at the bar and having a drink. But you all were here with us, and I'm so grateful, UNESCO, my colleague in UNESCO and myself, to all of you for your dedication and for your perseverance. You may not leave this meeting feeling that you have accomplished a lot. Everyone spoke what they wanted. But it's the beginning. We're talking to each other. We're listening to each other, and we're finding that there are thoughts that are echoed from one another. The promise that I can give you, and I'm sure I'm talking on the behalf of both our organizations, we will continue. We will not give up. We're going to see you again. You're going to see us again, and we're going to get results until we make this world a better place to enjoy for all of us. I thank you all very much. Thank you.
And with that, we shall conclude the events. To our co-hosts, our co-sponsors, thank you. And again, thank you to our distinguished guests. And maybe history did begin right here today. Let's hope so. Thank you.